Picture this. You are standing on a freezing, wind-whipped tarmac in Kotzebue, Alaska.
Oh, wow. Okay. Setting the scene.
Yeah, and it's this tiny village, like 20 miles above the Arctic Circle, and right in front of you is a single-engine bush plane.
Right?
But honestly, it looks less like a reliable aircraft and more like an empty Campbell's soup can with wings.
That is definitely not what you want to see before a flight.
Exactly. And you watch the pilot walk up, and you notice the entire frame of this tiny plane is wrapped in this strange polyfiber material.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so you pointed out, and the pilot just casually mentions, yeah, it's basically duct tape.
Wait, like actual duct tape?
Well, he says it's special duct tape, sure, but yeah, it is duct tape.
Which is deeply unsettling considering you're about to get into this thing.
Right. You're about to squeeze into the back seat with your knees practically crammed against your throat and take off into hurricane-force winds.
Winds that threaten to tear the landing gear completely off, I imagine.
You guessed it. And your destination is the absolute middle of nowhere. You'll be dropped off for 33 days with whiteout snowstorms, 1,000-pound grizzlies, and exactly 0 cell service.
I mean, that is just the ultimate terrifying, deeply uncomfortable scenario.
It really is.
Yet the core argument of the source material we are looking at today is that putting yourself in that exact kind of visceral, unpredictable situation might actually be the best thing you could possibly do for your physical and mental health.
Today, we are doing a deep dive into excerpts from Michael Easter's book, The Comfort Crisis.
It's a fascinating one.
It is. Our mission is to explore a truly radical but heavily science-backed idea. The idea that our modern, temperature-controlled, ultra-convenient lives are secretly eroding our well-being.
Yeah, we're going to look at why intentionally injecting artificial discomfort into your life could be the ultimate shortcut to reclaiming your wild, happy, and healthy self.
And before we go any further, take a second to look around at your own surroundings right now.
Good point. You were probably sitting somewhere comfortable.
All right, the temperature is likely hovering right around a perfect 72 degrees.
You haven't had to, physically hunt or forage for your last meal.
And there is almost certainly a smartphone sitting within arm's reach.
Yeah, we consider all of these conveniences to be the baseline of a good, successful life, but the sources suggest we need to seriously question whether this infinite comfort is actually a biological trap.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because to understand how we got snared in this comfort trap, we really have to rewind the clock.
We do.
Because this level of daily ease is a massive evolutionary plot twist.
It really is. If we connect this to the bigger picture, human history stretches back roughly 2.5 million years.
Right.
But the modern comforts that define our reality, like cars, ultra-processed food, air conditioning, computers, those have only existed for about 100 years.
I was trying to wrap my head around that math earlier. It means we've lived in this state of constant, frictionless comfort for just 0.004% of our existence.
That is just a microscopic sliver of time.
It is. Today, the average American spends 93% of their time indoors.
Wow. 93%.
Yeah, you wake up in a climate-controlled bedroom, walk to a climate-controlled garage, and drive a climate-controlled car to a climate-controlled office.
We've literally built an entire existence around avoiding the physical realities of the outdoors.
We have, and we are paying a very high price for it. Michael Easter's own personal backdrop really highlights this disconnect.
Yeah, his story is super relevant here. He had built what looked like an enviable modern life, a successful career as a health journalist, a comfortable home, the whole 9 yards.
But his primary coping mechanism, his ultimate comfort blanket, was alcohol.
Right. He used it to numb the stress of his job, to kill any sense of boredom, and to hide from the everyday insecurities of just being human.
But then he hit a breaking point. He woke up one morning essentially facing a choice. He could keep clinging to that liquid comfort and die early, or do the exact opposite and lean into incredible discomfort.
And he chose sobriety.
He did. And the acute physical and mental hell of that withdrawal was profound.
But coming out on the other side, he had this massive realization, didn't he?
Yeah. He was sober, sure, but he realized he was still marinating in comfort everywhere else in his life.
Right. He woke up in a soft bed, sat in an ergonomic chair, ate highly caloric food he didn't have to work for.
Exactly. And he killed any lingering boredom by just scrolling on his phone.
Yeah.
He never once felt the sensation of actual physical discomfort.
And he realized that absence of friction was literally making him miserable.
So that realization led him to uncover the psychological mechanism behind why infinite comfort is so dangerous.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting. There is a Harvard psychologist named David Lavari who researches something called prevalence-induced concept change.
Okay, that sounds intense. What is that?
Well, in one of his most famous studies, he had participants sit at a computer and look at a series of 800 human faces.
800 faces.
Yeah, quite a lot. And these faces ranged from very intimidating to completely harmless. The participants had one job: just push a button when you see a threatening face.
Okay, simple enough.
Right, but here is the twist. As the experiment went on, Lavari subtly stopped showing them the truly threatening faces.
Oh, so the real threats just vanished from the screen.
Exactly. But the participants didn't stop pressing the button.
Wait, really? Why?
That's the fascinating part. When the genuinely scary faces disappeared, the participants' brains simply lowered the threshold for what constituted a threat.
So they started labeling neutral faces as threats.
Yes, they started flagging completely harmless faces as aggressive. Lavari did another version of the study too, with 240 scientific research proposals, asking people to flag the unethical ones.
Let me guess. He removed the truly unethical ones.
He did. He secretly removed them, and people just shifted their standards. They started flagging completely ambiguous, harmless proposals as severe ethical violations.
Oh man, it's just like a
A
thermostat.
thermostat.
Yeah. If you constantly turn the heat up in your house, your body adapts. What used to feel perfectly warm suddenly feels freezing cold.
Oh, I see. Your baseline shifts.
Exactly. If you think about your own life, remember the last time your streaming service took an extra 5 seconds to buffer?
Oh, yeah, the absolute worst.
Right. But did you feel a spike of actual rage? Because that is your internal thermostat misfiring.
That makes so much sense.
As our real life or death survival problems have vanished over the last century, our brains haven't stopped looking for problems. We literally invent hollow first world problems to fill the void.
And Lavari calls this phenomenon comfort creep. Because our brains constantly adjust expectations, today's absolute luxury becomes tomorrow's strict baseline requirement.
Which is wild.
It is. We are biologically wired to seek comfort. I mean, that instinct is what kept early humans alive when comfort was incredibly rare.
Right, it was a survival mechanism.
But put that same biological wiring into an environment where comfort is infinite, and it completely backfires. We shrink our comfort zones until almost everything feels like an unbearable hardship.
So our internal thermostat is broken because we have too much comfort, which means we have to figure out how to recalibrate it.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, we can't exactly sell our houses and go back to being Stone Age hunter-gatherers chasing down mammoths, right?
No, we definitely can't do that, but we can intentionally manufacture our own adversity.
Okay, now we're talking.
And this is where a concept called misogi comes in. It was popularized by Dr. Marcus Elliott, who is a Harvard-trained physician and a leading sports scientist.
The origins of misogi are so amazing. It actually comes from an ancient Japanese Shinto myth.
Oh yeah, the story of Izanagi.
Right. So the god Izanagi journeys into the underworld to rescue his dead wife. He battles demons and zombies, barely escapes with his life, and then dives into a freezing river to purify himself.
It's just a casual freezing plunge.
Yeah, but that freezing plunge washes away the defilements of hell and rockets him into a state of total clarity.
And Dr. Elliott modernized this ancient purification ritual to help everyone from elite NBA players to just regular people smash their perceived limits.
So how does a modern misogi actually work?
Well, his modern take has two very strict rules. Rule number one is that it must be really, really hard.
Define really hard.
Specifically, if you plan everything perfectly and execute at your absolute best, you should still only have a 50-50 chance of actually succeeding.
Whoa. Okay. And rule number 2?
Rule number two is simply don't die.
Well, that's a good rule to have.
Yeah. There are also a couple of soft guidelines, like make it quirky so you aren't just comparing your time to someone else's on a public leaderboard.
Oh, I like that.
And absolutely do not boast about it on social media.
Okay, but I have to push back on that first rule for a second.
The 50-50 rule.
Yeah. Why would anyone intentionally design a challenge where they are mathematically likely to fail? Come on. If I run a local marathon or do a brutal spin class that leaves me completely dead, isn't that enough discomfort?
Well, this raises an important question, and it's honestly the exact hurdle most people face with this concept.
Right, because failure sucks.
It does. But Dr. Elliott argues that without the genuine threat of failure, you aren't exploring the actual edges of your potential.
Okay.
Think about that spin class. You are in a highly controlled artificial environment with an instructor telling you exactly what to do.
True.
You know exactly what the outcome will be. But a Masogi forces you into the unpredictable Wild West. The human brain hates the idea of failure, but there is compelling research by Dr. Mark Seary on the concept of toughening that explains why facing that failure is necessary.
Wait, Siri is the researcher who did the ice water bucket test, right?
Yes, he is. But the scope of his research was much larger than just that test. He actually surveyed a massive diverse group of 2,500 Americans over several years.
Wow, that's a big study.
Yeah, and he was tracking the major stressors they faced in life, things like illness, loss, or financial ruin. He then compared that history of adversity to their overall health and life satisfaction.
And what did he find?
He found that people who had been heavily sheltered from adversity entirely, they actually fared worse than everyone else.
Wait, really? The sheltered people did worse.
Yeah. The people who had faced some adversity, not a crushing amount that destroyed them, but a moderate amount of real hardship, they had the highest life satisfaction.
That is wild.
They handled physical pain better, used fewer prescription painkillers, and were significantly less depressed.
And he proved this in the lab too, right? By having people stick their hands in buckets of freezing ice water.
Exactly.
The people who had navigated some significant past adversity literally reported feeling less intense pain than the highly sheltered people. Their reference point for pain was completely different.
That's it, right there. Without historical rites of passage, like the Aboriginal walkabout in the Australian outback, or the Maasai warriors in Kenya who had to hunt a lion with a spear to become a man.
Yeah, we don't really have those
We
anymore.
don't. And because of that, our brains simply don't know what real failure looks like.
Yeah.
Because we are so sheltered, we overestimate modern failures.
Oh, I totally do that.
We all do. We trick ourselves into thinking that a ruined PowerPoint presentation or a bad look from a boss is a life or death scenario. Masogi resets that biological scale.
So when you attempt to carry an 85-pound rock 5 kilometers underwater or paddleboard 25 miles across an ocean channel and you fail, but you survive, that ruined PowerPoint presentation suddenly doesn't seem so scary.
Exactly. You recalibrate your baseline.
Okay, so you survived this freezing 50-50 Masogi out in the woods. But here's the weird part that I noticed in the sources.
What's that?
People return from these brutal physical ordeals in the wild, feeling more relaxed than they do sitting in their ultra-safe, climate-controlled city apartments.
It sounds counterintuitive.
It really does. Why does our safety make us anxious? I mean, if cities offer us the ultimate survival comforts, hospitals on every corner, grocery stores, infinite heating, why does escaping them feel so vital to our mental health?
Well, it really comes down to cognitive load and evolutionary psychology.
Okay.
Easter writes about this profound moment of isolation when he is 101 miles deep into the Alaskan Arctic.
Oh yeah, the bush plane trip.
Right. He's staring at grizzly bear poop, and he realizes he is completely, utterly alone. There is no cell service, no safety net.
Just him and the bears.
Yeah, but instead of feeling lonely or panicked, he actually feels entirely unencumbered. This highlights a stark contrast with the loneliness epidemic we currently face in modern society.
Oh, where people are surrounded by millions of others but feel completely isolated.
Precisely.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I was looking at the data in the sources, and a Gallup poll found that 84% of Americans live in cities, but only 12% actually want to live there.
That is a massive disconnect.
It is. And despite city dwellers having much higher incomes and immediate access to survival resources, they suffer from 21% higher anxiety and 39% higher depression than rural dwellers.
And there's this evolutionary psychologist, Satoshi Kanazawa, who came up with something he calls the savanna theory of happiness to explain this exact paradox.
The savanna theory.
Yeah. For millions of years, humans lived in tribes of roughly 150 people. That specific number is known as Dunbar's number.
Okay, let's break down Dunbar's number for a second because the mechanism behind it is wild.
It really is.
It's not just a random population cap, is it? It's literally tied to the physical size of our neocortex.
Precisely. The neocortex is the part of the brain responsible for conscious thought and language.
Right.
Keeping track of social relationships takes an immense amount of computing power. I mean, you have to remember who is friends with whom, who owes you a favor, who holds a grudge.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Right. And Dunbar's research showed that with the size of the human brain, we physically max out at managing about 150 social narratives at once.
And the population density for those ancient groups was roughly one person per 6 square miles.
Yes. Now compare that to Manhattan, which packs 417,000 people into that exact same 6 square mile space.
Oh my gosh, that is insane.
So when you walk down a city street or ride a subway, your ancient brain is subconsciously trying to process the social narratives of thousands of strangers pressing in on you.
But it can't do it.
No, it can't. The computing power just isn't there. Cities are fundamentally a landscape of despair for our biology because our brains are constantly, chronically overwhelmed by the social input.
Which means escaping into solitude, out into the wild. It isn't just a fun, aesthetic weekend activity.
No, it's a necessity.
It is a necessary biological reset.
Mm.
It builds your capacity to just be with yourself without the crushing psychic weight of constant societal expectations.
But here is the ultimate modern twist on this problem. You don't actually have to live in a sprawling metropolis to feel overwhelmed by a crowd anymore. Because today, we all carry a crowded, screaming city right in our pockets.
Oh, you mean the smartphone?
Exactly.
It is the ultimate modern comfort and, honestly, the ultimate escape from the discomfort of our own thoughts. The stats in the source material are just staggering.
They really make you think.
Yeah, if you're listening right now, think about your own screen time. The average person spends 11 hours and 6 minutes a day on digital media.
11 hours. That is almost half a day.
And we touch our phones 2,617 times a day.
It's unbelievable. We use these devices to instantly kill any sensation of boredom.
Right?
But a neuroscientist named James Dankert has spent decades studying the brain on boredom, and he found that we have completely misunderstood what boredom actually is.
How so?
Well, we tend to view it as an annoyance or almost like a torture, but Dankert's brain imaging scans tell a totally different story. When a person is bored, a part of the brain called the insular cortex actually deactivates.
Okay, the sources have a great way of looking at this. Think of the insular cortex as your brain's air traffic controller.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, it is always scanning your environment, directing your attention to immediate tasks and external stimuli. When you get bored, that air traffic controller essentially goes on break.
Right.
And when that happens, a different network turns on. It's called the default mode network. This is your brain's wandering, unfocused mode.
And Dankert uses an excellent analogy to explain why this evolved. Imagine two cavemen.
Okay, two cavemen.
The first one has the capacity to feel bored. He picks berries from a bush, but as the bush gets bare, it takes more effort to find the remaining berries.
Makes sense.
So he gets bored, which is an uncomfortable feeling. So he moves on to a new bush and eventually hunts a kudu. His family eats well.
Right, and the second caveman doesn't have the capacity to feel boredom.
Exactly.
So he just keeps picking at the same empty bush out of habit, getting almost no berries, and his family starves.
Yep. Boredom is not a bug, it's a feature.
It's a biological alarm clock telling you to stop what you are doing and do something else.
What's fascinating here is that boredom isn't supposed to feel good. It is a motivational state meant to push you into action.
But Silicon Valley figured out exactly how to hijack this biological alarm clock, didn't they?
They absolutely did. They used something called the behavior model, developed by Stanford psychologist B.J. Fogg. The model dictates that a behavior occurs when three things converge: motivation, ability, and a prompt.
I want to focus on that prompt for a second because this is where the hijacking actually happens.
Go for it.
So you feel the uncomfortable motivation of boredom. You have the ability to reach into your pocket, and then the app provides the prompt, usually a notification, like a little red dot. And those red dots aren't accidental, are they?
Not at all. Red is an evolutionary trigger. In nature, red signals either ripe, high-calorie fruit or venomous danger. It demands our immediate attention.
So it's literally hacking our primal instincts.
Yes. So when your brain's air traffic controller is on break during boredom, that red dot acts like a blaring siren. The controller rushes back to the desk. You click the app, and suddenly your brain's alarm clock is pacified without you actually having to do anything meaningful.
You instantly kill the boredom, but you completely bypass that default mode network.
Exactly.
And that unfocused, wandering mind is exactly where our brain does its best problem-solving and creative thinking. By constantly pacifying ourselves with screens, we are starving our brains of the essential downtime they need to synthesize information and generate new ideas.
We are essentially replacing deep thought with shallow stimulation.
It's like junk food for the mind. It kills the hunger of boredom without providing any actual creative nutrition.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And there's hard proof that this is damaging us on a societal level. Have you ever heard of the Torrance test of creative thinking?
I have. It is the gold standard for measuring human creativity.
Right. And it actually predicts lifetime success better than IQ tests do. They've been tracking these scores since the 1950s. The scores steadily rose for decades. But starting in 1990, right as digital entertainment and early screen time started to dominate our lives, creativity scores began to nosedive.
Which is pretty alarming.
It is. We're in the middle of a literal creativity crisis because we have driven boredom to extinction.
And if you never allow yourself to be bored, you never allow yourself the mental space to discover what you actually care about. You just consume whatever algorithmically generated content is put in front of you. You're just reacting instead of creating.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've covered a lot of ground today.
We really have.
We started by looking at how the past 100 years of absolute comfort represent just 0.0004% of human history, and how that infinite comfort is shifting your internal thermostat so that everyday inconveniences feel like massive crises.
Right, the comfort creep.
Exactly. Then we talked about Dr. Eliot's Misogi and the absolute biological necessity of attempting challenges where you have a genuine 50-50 shot of failing.
You've got to explore those edges.
Then we explored Dunbar's number, how our neocortex is capped at processing 150 people, and why our brains crave the wide-open spaces of the savannah rather than the dense crush of a modern city.
And finally, we looked at the insular cortex and why letting your brain feel the deep, uncomfortable ache of boredom is the only way to unlock your creative mind.
So true.
The main takeaway here is not that you need to throw your phone in a river and move to a cave in the wilderness.
Thankfully.
Yeah, but you do need to recognize that your biological drives were calibrated for a world of absolute scarcity. In our modern world of infinite abundance, those same drives will lead you straight into depression, anxiety, and physical decline if you don't manually override them.
You have to intentionally manufacture the adversity that nature used to provide for free. And you don't have to fly into the Alaskan Arctic or dodge 1,000-pound grizzlies to benefit from this deep dive. You can start small today.
Start really small.
Leave your phone at home the next time you go for a walk and just let yourself be bored. Force yourself to take a freezing cold shower. Or design your own mini Misogi, attempt a physical challenge this weekend where your success is absolutely not guaranteed.
Reclaim your edges.
Which leaves us with one final thought to mull over as you go about your day. For your entire life, you've likely been taught that the ultimate goal of success is acquiring more convenience.
Yep, that's the dream we're sold.
More frictionless living, more temperature control, more constant on-demand entertainment. But what if the exact opposite is true? What if the comforts you are working so frantically to acquire are the exact things holding you back from discovering who you actually are?
It's a heavy question.
What if your beautifully decorated, perfectly heated living room is really just a Campbell's soup can with wings, held together by special duct tape, tricking you into thinking you are safe, while you fly blindly through the storm of your one wild and precious life? Get uncomfortable. It might just save you.